Hey, everybody out there. With us is Bryant Thomas, who's had a long career in broadcast news and most recently with the AP News Bureau in Washington, D.C., where a lot of the political action happens, and Brian's seen a lot of it. Brian, we were speculating earlier this week about who they would pick to replace Biden. You thought it might be Michelle Obama. I thought it might actually be Hillary to fulfill that yearbook prophecy that she'd be the first female president of the United States. However, they are now coming together, coalescing around Kamala. So, how viable do you see her?
Well, she's already ahead of where Biden was in the polls against Trump. And more importantly, she's ahead in two key states, and that's Pennsylvania and Virginia. Um, but we're still 106 days from the election as we do this piece. And, they have to get better at this in terms of moving the numbers in their favor. And, you don't start with these types of candidacies and 24 hours later, you've got a 10-point bounce in the polls. That's not going to happen. It's going to take a lot of on the ground work and a lot of hard work to make this work, especially in the swing states, which of course always decides the election.
They said she's ahead in Pennsylvania. I mean, more so than Biden was, but not
Correct.
not ahead of Trump though in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania.
No,
Right.
she's two points behind in Pennsylvania, but she's 3 points ahead or in Virginia. Um, and I think that you know the first batch of polling that occurs now this week sometime will give us an indication of how excited voters are, not just Democrats, but voters are with her candidacy.
Well, Brian, it's widely expected that what they're going to be throwing at her is all the baggage from her co-presidency, as some people call it, with Biden, with the crisis at the border, with inflation, with crime in the cities, et cetera, et cetera. So can she free herself, disassociate herself enough from all of that to really draw a winning candidacy?
I don't think that sticks to her at all.
Really?
I think it sticks to Biden, and I think that you will see how much of it is um, a detriment to her candidacy in short order. But I don't think it transfers one to one. That makes no sense at all.
Well, I mean, let's take the border. She was appointed the quote border czar. She wasn't even at the border. Finally, she there was a slight appearance, but I mean, she did nothing with the border, so they're going to throw that at her. So how could she just toss all that aside? How could she unburden herself from all that baggage?
Well, up until she became the nominee, all they did was complain about Biden on the border. So all of a sudden you get a transfer of candidates and oh yeah, we're going to go after her because she was part of this game and therefore she's responsible. And if she bowed out, they'd blame another Democrat. It wouldn't matter.
Yeah, but I mean, she was appointed the border czar. She was supposed to do something about the border, and nothing happened. So, I mean, how could she just
Well, your
say,
your interpretation of nothing happened and what has actually been documented by the Border Patrol might be two different things. I think that incursions are down. There's no doubt about that. Even the Border Patrol says that. Um, and there are fewer illegal immigrants getting across the border now than there were 12 months ago.
well, I mean, my information is different than that. They're down in the areas where the individual states have taken action to prevent so many crossings. But I mean, generally, it's way the heck up from what it was when Biden took office. I mean, millions have poured over the border, unchecked, unvaccinated, just welcomed in, and it's a fire hose of migrants crossing the border. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I think that there's certainly been an increase during the Biden administration. But Trump has nothing to write home about in terms of the numbers either. And before that, Obama, and before that, the Bush administration. Everybody has had a border problem with migrants coming across the Mexican border. And yes, it's gotten worse. I'll grant you that, but the issue is not new. And I think that as this campaign takes shape, the border is not going to be front and center as a campaign issue. I think it's going to be the economy, it's going to be jobs, it's going to be the abortion issue, and especially the abortion issue.
Yeah.
And she brings a lot of women to this campaign that Biden had not been able to attract. She's a Black woman, she's South Asian. She brings with her a coalition of not only those groups, but Hispanics that Biden clearly was in trouble with.
Yeah, I think the abortion issue is their strong suit, granted. But, inflation, the crime in the cities. I mean, are you going to say that was Trump's fault as well, with the 3.5 years of the Biden administration?
Look, crime in the cities and gunfire in the cities did not start with Joe Biden. It's been rising and rising and rising. You think back to the Obama administration, Chicago was in uproar over that. And during the Trump administration, it just got worse. And now it's still worse under Biden. So nobody can blame crime in the streets on any one political candidate. If you do, you got a screw loose. That's not what causes crime in the streets.
Okay, among the biggest concerns of voters, according to the polls, is the economy, inflation, and the border is, I think, right underneath that. So you think they're going to be able to justify what their administrations have done in terms of those issues? I mean, those are the two biggest issues in poll after poll, as far as I could see.
Well, let's see how it reflects on her numbers. If she has got numbers that are decidedly better in the first couple of weeks of polling beyond what Biden has, then you're going to know that there's something going on in terms of her ability to attract voters. Not just Democrats, and certainly not Republicans, but the independents who always decide the election.
So you think then that she has a real shot at beating Trump?
Oh yeah, I don't think there's any question about that.
Really?
Look, Trump's base of support has not really improved over what it was when he lost the election, maybe 2 or 3 points higher. He's still now in the mid 40s, and that's not strong enough for a knockout punch. If she comes in and whittles that number down, then Trump is right back to where he was in 2020.
All things being equal, who would have had a better shot against Trump other than Kamala?
Well, I had thought that before this coalescence of Democrats and others around Harris, that Michelle Obama might be the savior for this party for this year. But it appears that Democrats don't want a bloodbath, and I think over the nomination. And what you're seeing is a complete concerted effort to get behind this candidate and make her winnable against Trump.
Who do you think the vice presidential pick will be?
That's a tough one. Andy Beshear was on, Governor of Kentucky was on Morning Joe this morning and danced all around it. And, I mean, he's a scrapper. There's no doubt about it. He won re-election in Kentucky when Trump won it by 26 points. So I think that, certain people bring certain things to the table. The Democrats aren't going to take Kentucky. That's crazy. They're not going to take some of the other states that are in play. I think, for instance, you have a governor there, Josh Shapiro, who's being mentioned.
Right.
I think Pennsylvania is close enough where they don't have to rely on choosing Josh Shapiro. Um, I think that Arizona, probably with Trump ahead by 5 or 6 points, depending upon the poll you look at, has got a bigger problem. And if they choose Mark Kelly, Gabby Gifford's husband, um, that's certainly a move in the right direction. He's white, he's male, and that's a good counterbalance to the ticket. Now, that's not to say anything bigoted, it's just a fact. And that is something that I think would work well with voters.
Do you think Trump's near assassination moved the needle much either way?
No, not at all. I think they already have done polls that showed he maybe got a point out of that, and that's hardly a groundswell. I think they're um, it was an unfortunate event. It should not have happened, and I think it just shows conclusively how polarized this country is in terms of politics, and it's just I don't know what the solution is, but I know that we can't go on a political game of name calling and continuing to ostracize young voters who just can't get beyond the childishness of it and and ostracize them from the political system. You and I talked about this before. 17 to 22% of under 25 people are not even going to vote, no matter what. That's tragic.
Hmm.
What are they going to do when they're 35 and 40? And all you and I, the baby boomers, are gone by then. You know, both parties suffer in that sort of thing. And, I think that if this candidacy of Kamala Harris can do anything to improve participation by young people, that's a plus for both sides.
Both of us are old enough to remember the 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago.
Mhm.
That was chaos.
Oh, yeah.
And the protests there were the Vietnam War. Now it's shaping up that the protests there are going to be about what's going on in Gaza and maybe to some extent Ukraine. And also another parallel is the president bowing out at the last minute before the convention. It was Lyndon Johnson bowed out. It surprised everybody. And that,
Much earlier in the year, though. It wasn't
yeah, yeah,
this late.
right.
The Democrats had time to pick a candidate, and they picked George McGovern, and that was a tremendous boo boo. So I think that it's uh, it's not the same parallel. Biden was an unfortunate victim of circumstance. I mean, the energy industry ramped up prices right after the invasion of Ukraine, and the predictability of what happened with inflation and what it did to Biden was very, very easy to figure out. This was a calculated thing. They were after him and they got him.
Well, I know that's how you analyze what drove up oil prices, and I guess to some extent what caused inflation. There's a lot of economists that disagree with that, but despite the real cause and whose fault it actually was, I mean those are big irritants among the population right now. And the voting population isn't necessarily going to think deeply about whose fault it really is and all that. So what I'm getting back to is my original point. Can Kamala Harris really disassociate herself from everything that many people are convinced went wrong and are still going wrong because of Biden's handling of the presidency? I mean, to me, it seems like it's not going to be an easy thing that suddenly, she had nothing to do with that. I mean, she was the vice president. She claimed, she worked with him hand in hand, that he was doing great and this and that. And plus, she's among those who say, it's like I'm shocked shocked to learn that there's gambling going on here. That's a line from Casablanca.
Casablanca, yeah.
But I mean, she's among those who kept saying that he's sharp as a tack. Everything is great with him. No, 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 all this stuff about him slipping was a lot of hogwash. So that's another thing that she's going to be hammered with, no?
Well, I think it's you have to expect that sort of thing in politics. I don't think that that's unusual. I think it's look at all the excuses that were made for Trump. I mean, it was endless, and they're still making them. Such as uh, Senator Daines calling for Biden to step down now because if he's not qualified to run for reelection, he's not qualified to serve out the rest of his term.
Yeah.
What kind of nonsense is that? That's crazy. That's
Well,
absolutely crazy. Look, there's a school, a stupid school that Republicans all go to. We don't know where it is, but they all go there and they all graduate summa cum laude.
so there's no logic to their contention that if he's too feeble, if he's too mentally impaired to run for reelection, he should still be able to be in the presidency.
That's not what I said. What I'm saying is that he got jackpotted by a lot of things that put him behind the eight ball. And
But
I think that he's handling them poorly. And I think if there is a cognitive issue, um, then that will become very apparent in the weeks ahead.
you don't think it's become apparent in the last year, in the last 6 months, especially in the last few months? I mean, it's glaringly obvious to millions of people, don't you think?
I think there's a problem there. I don't think it precludes him from serving out his term.
Well, I mean, more and more people are saying, I think on both sides of the aisle, who's really running the country? I mean, you saw him during the debate. He was losing his train of thought, staring into space, mouth gaping, and he's constantly making kindly. It's described as gaffes, but it really seems to be, a mental deterioration. So, I mean, it's been obvious for quite a long time. So, therefore, are you saying that there is no merit to the argument that if he's that much in decline, he has no reason trying to run the country, no reason being president?
Look, the only reason it's being done is to garner votes for the Republican Party. That's the only reason Dane shut off his mouth. No other reason whatsoever.
Well, I mean, sure, they're going to capitalize on it politically. I mean, that's the game both sides play. I realize that, and I give you that. But what I'm saying is, despite the political, the way they're using this politically, there is a real indication that he is mentally he's slipped. He's not cognitively capable of carrying out the duties of president.
Well, I think that if he is not, if he's as bad as that, if he's really as bad as that, you will see people within the White House move to fix that. And that is to move Kamala Harris up and have Biden step down. I
Or,
don't think we're anywhere near that point.
or they'll just keep him, as the Republicans said, in the basement and control, no news conferences or nothing off the teleprompter. So they could minimize the obviousness of him being enfeebled. So, I mean, many people are convinced that they've been doing that all along for quite a while, where it's other people running the country behind the scenes or keeping them contained. So, I mean,
Look,
even gets worse, they could still play the same game.
here's the contradiction right here. In the last years of the Reagan administration, a very good reporter friend of mine told me a story about a Fortune 500 CEO got an audience with Reagan in the last year of his presidency. He
Right,
wanted something from Reagan, and he made his pitch. And when he was through, Reagan nodded his head, leaned forward, pulled out an index card from a container, and gave him an answer.
right.
So it all depends on who's doing the talking.
That was in the last year of his second term. His cognitive disability wasn't that
Well,
apparent.
how come the Republicans didn't want to get rid of him or the Democrats didn't want to get rid of him?
Well, I mean, they should have. I mean, I'm not defending the fact that, that wasn't more noted. I'm not defending that, but what I'm saying is the reality is, from everything that I could see, is, he is really slipped and he's not cognitively capable of carrying out the heavy
I don't think
duties
it's
of
that bad. I really don't think it's that
really.
bad. I think he has moments where he might have lapses, but I don't think he's as bad as that.
He has moments of lucidity and a lot of moments of lapses, and it's getting worse. I mean,
Well, we think it's getting worse. I think if you look at his performance in Detroit, 2 days after the debate or 3 days after the debate, it was two different people.
yeah,
Now, what did they hype him up with steroids or something?
well, I mean, that's the thinking on it. I don't know what happens, but I mean, we've seen this time and time again where he's way off, seems in the outer space some days, and then he's perked up. So a lot of people think he's getting Adderall or whatever it is. And also, according to what was it, the New York Times, weeks from his aides, he's good from 10 to 4 every day. After that, his concentration fades. So, I mean, there's been reports from inside the White House. There's been reports from the inner circle that are confirming this, according to the New York Times
Well, if that's
and
if
other
that's if that's true, and it happens repeatedly, day after day after day, then that's different from what most people's perception is, that he has bad days and good days. If every day is a bad day, that's another story.
Okay. Before we close, what do you think of Obama's alleged manipulation behind the scenes, and also the way he ushered him off the stage at that time during that fundraising with George Clooney and all that, like
Hmm.
the little boy? Now, was that intentionally a signal to let everybody know that he's too out of it to be president because they wanted to push him out, or was he being kind? Well, how do you interpret that move by Obama?
I don't know how. I don't know how to interpret it. I think that Obama knew that um, he didn't like what he was seeing in Biden, and he he said it privately to enough people so that it got out. Um, and I give him credit for not shooting his mouth off in public, but I think there was genuine concern there.
Yeah, but I mean, it looked really belittling to Biden, did it not?
Yeah, you could interpret it as that, but I think that um, the poll numbers were slipping for whatever reason. And I think it was cumulative. It wasn't just that. It was inflation. It was the border. Might have been crime. It might have been any number of specious issues that the Republicans have been harping away on for 3.5 years. Um, and Biden was not very good at blunting a lot of the criticism. He did what a lot of Democrats, I feel, have done in the past, and that is to cower in the corner until the carping stops rather than going out and fighting it. And I think Biden fell into that trap too.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it was so much that they were cowering and they weren't trying to counter. I mean, uh, to me, there were many instances where they just outright gave a narrative that didn't match reality. Like Mayorkas kept insisting the border is closed, the border is sealed, the border is secure. You could see every day hundreds, if not thousands, of people coming across the border. So it was like,
Well,
uh,
were those videos real or were they staged? See, we don't know that. We don't really know that.
you'd think those were staged. I mean, I've seen video after video, mostly shown by Fox, admittedly, which it has its own axe to grind. They're anti
Yep, that's
they're
right.
anti-Democrat. But I mean, I think it'd be awfully hard to fake that many videos, get that many extras in there. I mean, you could see it was the border. It was the real border. There were people there that you knew were contemporary figures. So, whether they were going back 10 years to Afghanistan or something, I don't think so. I mean, to me, they look genuine. And it was just like the big lie, just Mayorkas, the border is sealed, the border is secure, there's no problem. It was like Baghdad Bob, with the bombs going off, saying that
Yeah,
nothing's
yeah.
happened there.
Well, I think if anyone were to take those videos and look at them frame by frame, compare them, and see how many people are in the same pictures on different days. Let's see how many of those same people pop up in those different, then I might go for it.
Well, I mean, I've looked at them as closely as I could just off of TV, and I mean, to me, it didn't seem staged at all. I mean, there were different people, there were different parts of the border, different times of day. To me, it'd be awfully hard to stage that. But maybe I'm not discounting as a possibility what you're saying, but I think it's extremely unlikely.
Look, AI does a lot of things, just remember that. And
Maybe.
I don't put anything past um, the far right to try to drum this home and make it the campaign issue, the cause select for this election. And it's just not there. And it's going to stall on them. And mark my words, it's not going to be the great issue that's going to swing this election. It's just not.
We'll see, Brian. Brian Thomas, who wrapped up his career at the AP Bureau in Washington, D.C., where you interviewed a lot of politicians, a lot of newsmakers, and all through your career, you'd been keeping tabs on the political system in the U.S. So, I mean, I'm talking with a person, who's well versed in it, even though we obviously disagree on some key points. So, Brian, nice being with you again, and we'll continue talking.
You bet.